Citizens Opposing Hatred and Bigotry, or COHAB, was formed in June 1993, primarily to oppose Missouri's Amendment Coalition. But in September, we were called upon to defend the inclusion of sexual orientation as a category in the city's Bias Crimes Ordinance. A city task force found that attacks on gay people were the second most common bias crime during a 2-year period. But a group calling itself Citizens for Decent Standards, or CDS, seized upon the orientation category to introduce the now familiar arguments of the theocratic right. The City Council hearing on the ordinance was a dramatic event. For the first time in Springfield, gay people became visible, standing up to counter the lies of homophobes. Half of the pro-ordinance speakers and 75 to 80% of the audience were gay.
Sadly, I must say that nowhere I've lived have I seen a greater need for an anti-bias crimes ordinance than the city of Springfield. I've heard racism directed against African Americans and Native Americans. I've heard people speak of Christianity as if it were the only religion and somehow the only model of goodness and morality, as if other religions and cultures such as Judaism did not exist, let alone measure up to Christianity's moral standards. Most of all, however, I have observed homophobia, that disease, that fear and disgust toward even the topic of homosexuality, and a hatred toward gay men and lesbians, and anyone who speaks in favor of gay rights.
For every one of the gay, lesbian, and bisexual speakers here tonight supporting this ordinance, there are hundreds, perhaps thousands of others in this city who would like to be here but are not. The reason is that they are afraid. For years, they have lived in a city where people of different sexual orientation often lose their jobs, homes, insurance, everything. Sometimes they are harassed, sometimes worse.
That the prejudice I experienced as a woman is nothing compared to that I've experienced as a lesbian. In this culture, women may have second-class status in some areas. Gays and lesbians have no status at all. I want you to imagine what it's like to spend most of your days among coworkers who freely discuss their spouses, the date they had last night, the new person they met that they were attracted to, and you're forced to stay silent, or worse yet, you feel compelled to lie so no one will know that you are gay. I want you to imagine what it is like to know that one slip of the tongue, yours or someone else's, might cost you your job, your promotion, your apartment, your credit, your insurance, or your children.
City Council passed the Bias Crimes Ordinance by a 7-2 vote. CDS immediately forced the law to a referendum vote in the next municipal election, February the 8th. On January 17th, COHAB held a news conference to counter media concentration on CDS's propaganda. Using a broad spectrum of Springfield civic leaders, we made the argument for the Bias Crimes Ordinance. But Paul Summers, CDS head, attended the conference and drew heavy coverage which distorted our message.
Homosexual lifestyle is being legitimized, and that's what this does. And that is the sole purpose of this ordinance.
Our next strategy was a direct confrontation with Summers. We tried to negotiate a debate. Summers promised, reneged, and claimed that a meeting with COHAB would legitimize terrorists. But when Paul Cameron, a national anti-gay activist, agreed to hold his hand, Summers capitulated. COHAB co-director David Patrick and board member Brett Kensington spoke for the ordinance in a public radio debate.
Dr. Paul Cameron, your question, and direct it toward one of your opponents.
All right, to Brett, please. Brett, since it is the case that homosexual activity is so dangerous, how can you seriously say that the citizens of Springfield should take those acts and make them a qualification for getting a special right, a special privilege?
The ordinance grants no special privileges. It is a sentence enhancement for bias crimes. No privileges are granted whatsoever. The categories simply name crimes in Springfield which have been found to be the basis of bias in the past. As far as homosexuality being dangerous, the group in our society which has the lowest incidence of diseases are lesbians. All sexually transmitted diseases. One would almost suspect that lesbians are God's people.
On the eve of the election, Cohab organized a rally at City Hall. 40 speakers from all walks of life declared their support for the ordinance. The press coverage was limited, but provided a stark contrast to the inept press conference CDS held the same day. Despite defeat of the ordinance, Cohab members believe that visibility is still our strongest weapon. We continue our fight against the Missouri Amendment.
Neither the state of Missouri through any of its branches or agencies, nor any of its political subdivisions, shall enact, adopt, or enforce any statute or policy whereby homosexual, lesbian, or bisexual activity, conduct, or orientation shall entitle any person to demand minority status, affirmative action, or claim of discrimination.
We're in the signature gathering process, still trying to get the petitions. We have until July the 8th this summer as the final date to get them into the Secretary of State. I have no confidence at all that the legislature or the governor would try to put this thing through. We know that even if we found somebody to submit it to the legislature, it'd probably die in committee.
I think anybody who reads the Amendment Coalition proposal will understand that it's simply not constitutional. It's very un-American.
To enhance our visibility, Cohab joined the producer, Cruz Devon, to create a local public access show, This Gay Life.
I think the only two things that scare me the worst would be silence and apathy, and we need to really overcome those two greatest sins of ourselves and learn to speak up and be out there and be viable and let the community know that we're out there.
Cohab continues its tactics of creating visibility through community service projects, a community and media presence, and its work in building a gay community in Springfield.